Hi everyone, welcome back to LegendHaven 2023, and we're back with Karina Fabian. Welcome back, Karina. So good to have you with us.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be here. This
It
is
is so fun to be
exciting.
back. Yes, second year in a row. New theme is Worlds Without End, and this is part of our countdown to the actual con, unless you're watching the replay afterwards, in which case, just have fun. Karina is fantastic. She was with us in There Be Dragons, which was our 2022 theme. Now she's back, this time to talk about bringing humor into your writing. You're actually doing stand-up and you write these hilarious novels. Okay, so here is a brief little blurb. Karina Fabian is a graduate of the Orlando Improv Comedy course, and she's been writing humorous fiction for 20 years plus. So whether it's rednecks in space, exterminators who specialize in zombies, or a down-on-his-luck dragon charged with protecting the world, her characters and stories have been known to make people snort milk out their noses, or something stronger, which is what I would be drinking, and would probably come with a warning label. Karina, welcome. Let's talk about humor.
All
What is a
right.
world without humor?
A world without humor is sad indeed. And it would not be a world that I want to live in, which is why I write these kind of things.
So tell us more about what you've been working on more recently. You launched a new book just this past year. At least I've seen one, if not more. Take it away.
All right. Well, actually, I'm printing out 2 or 3 books a year now. At least one
Wow.
in my Space Traipse Hold My Beer series, which is a Star Trek parody or Star Trek-ish parody. Sometimes it's very parody of Star Trek. The next one coming out, which will be the previous one, because it comes out in, it'll come out before LegendHaven, Space Traipse Hold My Beer 7. And the big parody in that one was of the Next Generation episode, The Child, which is the one where a little bitty energy being gets Troy pregnant. And it's just a sad episode because just the way they treated the whole thing. I hated that episode, so I had to parody it. And it turned out to be so much more fun when you accept the ridiculousness of the situation
Mm-hmm.
and go into what's called the four attitudes of humor, the weird, scary, hard, and stupid of it all.
Okay, you
And
have to unpack those in a minute, but
oh
keep
yes,
going.
I will be doing that. So yeah, but it's a lot of fun, and in the end, my character is not left to cry all by herself. And it sometimes it's just very healing for me when I come up
Mm-hmm.
across a bad Star Trek episode. But I do a lot of other parody of sci-fi tropes. Then in my fantasy side, I have the Dragon Eye series, which is about, you said, down and out dragon on the wrong side of the interdimensional gap, who's having to solve mysteries and save the world on a far too frequent basis.
Mm-hmm.
The last one that came out was Vern versus Godzilla,
Wow.
which, yeah, took all of the Godzilla tropes and pitted my poor dragon against them. And that one turned out just to be far more fun than I was expecting, actually. And the best thing about what I write and what I do is not only do I get feedback from people like, I really should not have read this at the library because I was laughing too loud,
Okay.
or I physically snorted milk out my nose. Thank you so much. And then I get more serious ones too. Like, I think the best one I've had lately was we were under a tornado watch and I was stuck in the basement for like 8 hours as tornado after tornado came after
Wow.
me. And
Okay.
your book just kept me entertained and distracted through the whole thing.
Wow.
And I think that that is what I love the most and what I think is the real beauty about humor
Mm-hmm.
and why it is a necessary charism. I mean, some people who write faith-filled fiction do it and they're very important and they encounter such deep topics,
Mhm.
but mine are just sheer escapism, and
Yeah.
that's all they're meant to be, because sometimes you just need that.
Hmm.
And that's what I love about humor. That's what I love about comedy.
Hmm. Yeah. So can you unpack the four different aspects of humor, and then how to apply them and not
Yes.
take yourself too seriously?
Oh, absolutely. All right. So this was what I had learned in the Orlando Improv Comedy class,
Hmm.
is that everything in life, no matter how serious, no matter how light, can be made humorous if you apply the four attitudes. You look for what is weird, what is scary, what is hard, or what is stupid in the
Okay.
situation. And when you find that and you dig deep into that, that's where you're going to find the humor. That's where you find the twists.
Hmm.
Now, the beautiful thing about being an author is that you can create the weird, scary, hard, or stupid, and you can exploit it for the laughs. In fact, after open mic night, I asked the MC for feedback, and he said, I wish you'd stop trying to make things funny and just talk about what already is funny. I thought, you know what? That's because I'm a writer.
Ah.
And it works better in fiction than it does in real life.
Hmm.
I'm not a great stand-up comedian like Jen Fulwiler, but I have fun at it. But I am a very good humorist because I do take my imagination to twist the situations
Hmm.
to make them more fun. And this can be, anything from taking a turn of a phrase, taking a character trait and blowing it up in one of those directions, or manipulating a situation. The big thing you have to keep in mind, though, when you're doing this, is that it has to still be believable in that universe.
Hmm.
So you can have slapstick. Like I had plenty of slapstick, like the Vern versus Godzilla. I mean, there's pratfalls with a mecha dragon. There's in one case they're having a tug of war. Vern and Godzilla are having a tug of war with a human being, and they they're outlandish, but as you're reading along in the story, they're all making perfect sense and they're very, very funny.
Hmm. What's something that since taking this class or graduating from it, uh, how did you change, or what things have changed in writing humor? Was there a point where you're writing and all of a sudden you realized, oh, I've not done this before, this is new and this is really cool and it works well?
A lot of it was I now understand my process. Uh,
Okay.
Before it was very much just instinctive,
Hmm.
and now I can see why what I'm writing is funny.
Hmm.
And because of that, I can stop and go, okay, now how do I make this even more funny,
Hmm.
understanding the rules of comedy?
Hmm.
The other thing that I learned was the power of brevity. And
Okay.
when you're doing stand-up comedy, you have 3 or 5 minutes to get people to seriously belly laugh. If you don't get at least a belly laugh a minute plus chuckles
Hmm.
throughout that, then you're bombing as a stand-up comic. Um, so you don't have to have that kind of quick pacing in a novel, but it does help you understand when you're building up that, the quicker you can get into that punchline, the better it can be for your story. And of course, there's a balance in there because of the nature of fiction. But when you want it fast, that was something that it helped me to learn.
So for you in doing this now for 20 years, what is one lesson that really stood out for you that you've learned, um, kind of doing it wrong, trying it again, figuring it out? Is it the brevity? Is that why you highlighted that?
Um, As far as what I learned from the comic class, yes.
Okay.
As far as what I've learned in writing humor over the long term, and something that I actually came into the comedy class with
Mhm.
is I call it having too much teeth.
What does that mean?
Where you think you're being funny,
Okay.
but you're being way too sarcastic, way too hurtful, and even hateful.
Wow.
And and you can lose that comedy then, especially with people that don't agree with your stance.
Hmm.
Now, I learned this when writing my Need a Life Zombie Exterminator books because they had a lot of political humor in them. And there were times my husband would proof it and he'd go, this really isn't as funny as you think it is. A recent example of this is Good Omens 2,
Okay.
which came out in July. And there were some things in there that were just outright hilarious.
Mhm.
But they took some of it just too far.
Okay.
Instead of playing off the innocence of angels,
Mhm.
they made them downright stupid.
Yeah.
And what should have been, at least for me as a Catholic, a belly laugh moment, like when they were trying to they were doing the parody of the Book of Job, and Job loses all his children, as you know. And so at the end of the story, it says, he gains back twice everything he lost, including twice as many children. And the two main characters, which is an angel and a demon, who are kind of neither totally good nor totally bad.
Mhm.
And they're like, why does he have to lose the children he already had? Why can't we give him those back? So they devised this way of pretending that Sarah will give birth by pulling out ribs, which they do with ox ribs, pulling out 3 ribs from Job, and then they hug, and suddenly the children appear out of those ribs. And it's really funny. It's cute. Except that then the angels are a little suspicious of this. And they turn and ask the one angel, the main character who's in on it, okay, is this really how these children are born? Are these really new kids? And they ask him like 3
Okay.
times, and
Just
he has to
clueless.
outright lie
Yeah.
3 times to them.
Mhm.
And that's where the humor was gone, because they went too far. They made it, instead of really funny, they made it uncomfortable.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and unbelievable. Do you think this is an angel? Angels will not lie to other angels.
Okay.
And the other angels wouldn't be so stupid. There's trusting and there's innocent, and I could even imagine that maybe Gabriel didn't know how a child is born, although even that, I mean, he was there for Mary. But you could really see that Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman are atheists in that, and a lot of their attitudes. Or maybe Netflix did it, I'm not sure. But that's a good case of taking that humor too far and losing it because of that.
Yeah. So that sounds like, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, you see that too sometimes, I think, in stand-up.
Okay.
So
I was going to say, so it's like you're losing the believability of the characters because you're trying hard to make a point, or you're trying to land something funny, and you break the believability of the story or something. So I guess then a question.
Well, and it goes back to what you said.
Yeah.
You're trying to make a point.
Mm.
You really feel like there's a message going on in that.
So how do you navigate that? Yeah.
It is a fine line. For one, I don't think that you should ever force message into humor. Humor can bring it out. Again, if you're finding the weird, scary, hard, and stupid,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to come out. You shouldn't have to. You don't point at something and go, "Look how stupid."
Mm-hmm.
You say, "Oh, hey, this thing," and then everybody laughs because it is stupid.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, it's like a joke I came up with. Oh, go ahead.
Well, go right ahead. I was just going to say that sounds like there's an honesty there.
Mhm.
If you really want to land it, it can't, like you say, it can't be pointing fingers in a partisan way, not just a political way, but in a tribalist way. But there's also pointing fingers at self. And most of the comics that I've ever enjoyed are they do an incredibly good job of making fun of themselves and sharing a truth through their own hilarious observations of their own experiences.
Yes. Yeah, and that's another thing we were taught in the class is that humor has a basis in honesty.
Okay. So how do you make a dragon honest then?
You make him true to himself in his universe.
Mm-hmm.
You set up a world, you set up something that is conceivable, that is believable within itself, and that is complete. So, like in this case, Vern is not just all about pratfalls, or even like in the scene I was talking about, those the pratfall with the mecha Vern.
Mm-hmm.
He's been shrunk essentially
Okay.
by God and has been for a very long time, and now he's going up against something that's like 10 times his size. And as a dragon, first that's hitting him in the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Two, he's actually scared, and he hasn't been scared in a long time. And you see that coming out, but he's going to do it anyways. But three, he's really wishing that he had armor, that he had size and all of this. And then some mages create for him a mechanical dragon, which was already in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And they adapt it to him. So he gets to be Mecha Vern. And he's so excited about it.
Okay.
But he can't control it right away. So the pratfalls come very naturally from the fact that he's still trying to figure out this magical technological interface while getting ready to fight a 120-foot atomic breath breathing monster. And so that's where the humor comes in. He's like, he's all excited because he's flying and he's made it and he looks great, and then he smacks the dirt on the landing. Yeah. And then his best friend is over the intercoms trying to tell him how to better land, and he's like, "Hey, who's driving this thing?"
Mm-hmm. When it comes to crafting, I like how you said at the beginning of of this conversation, you talked about just let's have fun and let's not try to be too serious, especially those in the faith-inspired space. How do you yourself? Well, what advice would you have for people? Let's say most of the people who are attending this con or in our community are people who do take our faith very, not just very seriously, they're deeply in love with it, but they want to figure out how to approach fiction and being ludicrously epic with it, which is kind of our thing, or just how to have a whole lot of fun with it. But this is a consistent question I come up with. I really want to do all this and have a ton of fun, like a Mecha Vern, but how do I also include my faith? And I people always seem to feel like they're trying to shoehorn the faith into the idea. And how have you made sense of something like that? Having a whole load of fun and humor, maybe still honoring the faith, if at all. It doesn't need even to be present or obvious.
It has to come from the characters. It has to be intrinsic to who they are and how they see the world. And so, like Vern, actually, the reason that he is a Catholic dragon is because he had a bad run-in with St. George.
Okay.
And now he's kind of recovering. And then from that, so much more has happened that has brought him deeper into the faith and into the practice of it. And there's a whole huge series arc about that has to do with the fall of the dragons and Not a funny side of it, but a very faith-filled side of it. So, and then, of course, his partner is a nun from Fairy who can also do magic. And so there's all of that. But I try not to make a big point out of it. It comes naturally from her being a nun. Like they were in a tense situation, and they had just been talking about false gods, and there's a terrible storm and everything else. So they're all stuck having to stay the night in this restaurant. And so right before bed, she says a blessing for everybody and a prayer, and just sneaks in protection from false gods. And like you said, sometimes there's nothing that necessarily has to have faith. Like most of my Space Traipse does not have a lot of Catholic elements. In fact, the captain, thanks to one of the stories, became Captarian, which follows the religion of the god that outgassed the universe.
Say what now?
Outgassed the universe.
Okay.
Basically, he pooted the world. So his worship involves, like, there's a line where I did Who Mourns for Adonais? And that's the one where they meet Apollo, and Apollo gets big and he yells, "Worship me," and they refuse. Well, in this case, Apollo, it was Neptune. He got really big. He said, "Worship me." And one character says, "Hey, I believe in the one God. I'm not kneeling to you." And the other one says, "I'm with him." And the captain says, "I'm Captarian. We don't kneel. We squat."
Okay, so here's a kind of follow-up question. We're talking all about dragons and kaiju and mecha verns. Why do you think fantasy and science fiction is needed and important, especially for faith-inspired authors?
The great thing about science fiction and fantasy is that you don't get with other genres like romance or literary or anything else, is that you can take a very serious real world issue and you can reframe it into a different setting. And from that, when done right, you can remove the person emotionally from their own biases.
Exactly.
So that they have kind of an outsider view looking in. And because of that, they can look at issues that if, say, you were debating it on Facebook or something, they'd get their backs up and like, no, my way or the highway. But if you're put in a different situation, and again, you have to do this without pounding your point, but they can look at it and go, hey, you know?
It's like looking at it for the first time.
Yes, yeah. And looking at it with some new eyes, especially if they're seeing it through the eyes of another character.
And humor seems to do that just as powerfully. And it's what would you like to leave with us as far as engaging with humor in fiction?
Okay, so humor at its best does two things. One, makes you laugh. If it's not amusing you, then it's not worth keeping. But in many ways, it can make you think. And depending on what you're trying to do with that, it's a very powerful tool indeed.
Wonderful. Thanks, Karina. Friends, if you enjoyed this, first of all, smash that like button. It's really going to help people learn more about Karina and what she's doing. Now, she's also got a special thing going as we're counting down to the con. First, if you head on over to her website, what's your website, Karina?
KarinaFabian.com.
There you go. And we'll also have the link in the description. If you head on over there, you join her mailing list, you'll get one free ebook. What's the ebook that you're giving away?
The ebook is actually a sampler of my many universes. So it is a story collection, 5 stories from each one of the universes that I write in. So there's a story about Vern, there's a Space Traipse story, there's a Need a Life story, and there's a story from my Rescue Sisters, which is serious Catholic science fiction with a huge Catholic. These are nuns in space. And then another one from a series that should be coming out soon, the Mind Over series, which is another not funny one. This one is about a young man who has psychic abilities that land him in an insane asylum. So you'll get that one free. It's called World of Fabian Space. And then if you go to my blog and comment on the blog, I'll put you in for a raffle, and I will give you your choice of any one of my books.
There you go. You hear that, friends? You head on over, you find the blog post where probably this video is posted if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching this on Karina's website, scroll right down and drop a comment. Don't just put the comment on YouTube, so that she can see it on her website, and you can get one free copy of any one of her books. And so we'll do that that drawing of the winner will happen after the con. That gives everybody a chance to get in there. So join Karina's mailing list, support her by grabbing a copy of her book, and then make sure that you come and join us at the con. Karina won't be able to be with us this year, but we are building a wonderful single day ton of fun where people can chat with each other. We're hosting story read alouds, there's workshops, there's RPG one shots. It's a whole day event just to hang out with other readers and writers, Catholic and Orthodox, who love faith inspired fiction, and mostly just fiction, like at all. Like we just love movies and games and stories. So any last thoughts about encouraging people to write or maybe come join us?
Last year's was fantastic. It's so much fun. So definitely go and join Legend Fiction. It's a great group. Probably the best thing out of that group is the time that we spent together pushing each other to write. A lot of inspiration. In fact, Vern versus Godzilla would not have come so quickly if it hadn't been for that group. So absolutely, Legend Fiction is fantastic. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's amazing. And if you've never heard of Legend Fiction is hosting LegendHaven. LegendHaven is our annual celebration event, so come and join us, totally free all day. And then start a free trial for Legend Fiction. 30-day free trial, $5 a month after that, cancel anytime. If you're not tripling your writing output, which most people are, it's a beautiful place to give and get feedback, share your works in progress, and like I said, triple your writing output, because we're all just having so much fun together. Check us out at legendfiction.com, and we hope to see you at the con. God bless you and keep writing.